Okay, I did my student dialogue on peer pressure, and I'm just going to go through the questions, the required questions right down the line, and kind of everywhere in between fill in my own personal thoughts about it. So for starters, um, do I feel that our group achieved true dialogue? I would say yes overall. No one tried to make fun of anyone, or no one said anything hurtful really. No one was really barking or arguing with each other. Everyone was pretty well reserved. Try not to hurt anybody's feelings again, as I said, and I think it all went pretty smoothly. Yeah, I think we reached true dialogue. But one problem that we found was we were peer pressuring each other into saying more than we wanted to say, which I found a little ironic considering the whole thing was on peer pressure. But it was just funny how even on accident we were trying to pull more information from people than they were willing to give. Say if they told a story and we wanted to hear more, but they weren't exactly willing to share more, we still tried to pull that information out of them. And that was an issue that came up more than once. Secondly, the observations, what I observed from the dynamics of the dialogue, about two-thirds, I think, about two-thirds of the group was pretty well reserved, pretty quiet, didn't have a whole lot of input. My personal role, I think that I was one of the leaders, or lead speakers, if you will. I seemed to be answering a lot of the questions. There was one other guy who was gay, which he openly stated that he was gay, and he had a lot of input. He shared his point of view on just about everything, and it was definitely a select few that basically ran the whole group. There was, again, as I said, there were others that were just kind of well reserved. Didn't really want to say too much, which is absolutely fine. And overall, what I think about the dialogue, I think it was a little bit pointless. And it says here, why do I think dialogue is a component of Library 100? And honestly, I've given it a lot of thought, and I don't know how to answer that question because I don't think it should be there. I think that it was kind of a waste of my time, quite frankly, not to be rude, but I had a lot of studying to do that night, a lot of other things going on, so that student dialogue was a bit of a disappointment, and the fact that it was 2 hours, I think, was a little bit overkill. I think they should either do away with the dialogue altogether, or at bare minimum, I think they should cut the time in half. I don't think there's any reason for them to hold those students in there for 2 full hours. And one thing that I tried to do was cooperate, answer questions quickly, thoroughly, and appropriately. And I feel like I did that, and I was hoping and thinking that if we kind of met our quota and got through everything, that maybe we could get out in like an hour and a half, or even less than that. But despite my best efforts, we were there for the full 2 hours, every minute of it, and by the end of it, people were just getting pretty sick of doing it. So I'll go in order of what we did. Firstly, we played that icebreaker game, which I thought went on way too long and took way too long, and it was pretty pointless. After that, we ran over about 8 or 10 bullet points on a handout that they gave us, which basically covered the rules and regulations to being able to speak freely in the classroom, in the dialogue. And I wouldn't say that was totally unnecessary. I think it was definitely a point that needed to be covered, but it took forever. And the leader of the group said, we're just going to go popcorn style around the room. Whoever wants to read can go ahead and read. And of course, there was about a 45-second or a minute pause or awkward silence that no one wanted to read, and it was kind of unorganized because we didn't know who was going to read, and we didn't want to interrupt each other. But after I think what seemed like an eternity, I think it was close to a minute, I just jumped in and started reading. And once I was done, it was another 30 seconds or more where we were waiting on the next person to start reading. And that took about 5 times too long. I'm not saying it wasn't necessary. I do think it was necessary, but it just took way too long. And even once we got to the last bullet point, there was an even longer pause and no one would read, so I just took over again and tried to read it thoroughly, quickly, and move things right along. I wasn't trying to rush it, I wasn't trying to be rude, but I just was hoping that if we cooperated and got through everything that we could get out early. After that, we did this circular graph thing, or no, excuse me. Before we did that, we went over dialogue, debate, and I think persuasion was the other one. Dialogue, debate, and one other. I think it was persuasion. And it was a little bit ridiculous. I think that took way too long. Several different groups answered the question, you know, the differences between debate and dialogue and so forth, and it got to the point that it was just getting very repetitive, and everyone was answering the same thing just in a slightly different manner, and it just took way too long, quite frankly. And after that, we made this circular graph that had your gender, your first language, your religious beliefs, your values, a couple other things that I can't remember, and basically we compared it to another randomly selected person in the room, and it was kind of like, yeah, these two people were different, these two people were the same, and it seemed pretty elementary to me, pretty I don't want to say childish, but I don't know any other word for it. But yeah, it seemed a little bit too basic. So anyway, after that, we finally got into peer pressure. I think it was after like an hour and 15 minutes, and once we started that, it was again kind of elementary, basic day one stuff. And another thing is that it was something that we've all heard 100 times between high school and orientation at Clemson and orientation at my last institute, which was Tri-County Tech. So I think we've all heard it 100 times, and some of the questions were a little bit ridiculously easy, like what are some ways to peer pressure people? And one thing we covered was peer pressuring people into drinking, and I don't think anyone should ever do that. And I do think that's an important topic, but again, something that we've covered 100 times over and over again. So overall, I think, like I said, I think that student dialogue, should be either taken out or at least cut down to 1 hour. Again, not to be rude, I found it kind of pointless, kind of a waste of time, and I definitely could have done without it. I would have been absolutely fine without it. But anyway, I think that should cover everything. So yeah.